What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the A24 Archive. This is a segment on my channel where I start from the beginning of A24's catalog and go all the way to whenever I get current again on their catalog. And today, the film I'm going to be talking about, I have actually already seen previously, and it was actually a film that I did not really enjoy all that much the first time that I watched it. And so whenever I watch these films that I've already seen that I haven't enjoyed the first time around, I hope to come back around the second time and get something else out of it, or hopefully come to enjoy it a little bit more, especially in the cases of the film that I'm talking about today, which is an A24 film that I feel like has a true following that people really love, and I see it in a lot of people's like top 10 spots on their top A24 lists. And so I was really hoping to come around on it this time, and I'll get a little bit more into it in the review. But today we're going to be talking about the film American Honey. American Honey is directed by Andrea Arnold. A teenage girl with nothing to lose joins a traveling magazine sales crew and gets caught up in a whirlwind of hard partying, law bending, and young love as she crisscrosses the Midwest with a band of misfits. So as I said before, I watched this movie the first time and I appreciated a lot about it. I appreciated the cinematography. I thought there were really great performances in it, but I found the film to be very hollow. The script doesn't really have much more going for it other than a portrait of this part of America where there's a very specific story attached to it about these kids selling magazines to try to, make it in their lives and get out of these unfortunate circumstances that they're a part of. But there's not much else to it. The character building isn't all that great. There's a lot of mundane sequences that add up to virtually nothing. And unfortunately, I felt the exact same way when I watched it this time around. This movie doesn't really do anything for me. As much as I can appreciate it aesthetically, I think that it is absolutely gorgeous. While I watch this film, I constantly think of the works of director Sean Baker, who has the knack for tackling these stories about more lower income areas in the United States of America and how people have to navigate their lives in those areas. And he does so in a way that's never like beating down on those communities or treating them differently. It's just very much looking at it through the lens of this is what people go through, this is how they deal with their lives on a day-to-day basis. And his movies are so rich and beautiful and thought-provoking. And I think of a film, one of my favorite films of all time, The Florida Project, which is like, in theory, a very similar idea to what this movie is trying to convey. Even so to where, like in this film, the characters are selling these magazines, they're trying to make money off people, they're not being honest with what they're doing with the money, where like in The Florida Project, our lead character, she is trying to sell these stolen Disney tickets, she's trying to sell these different cosmetic products, and there's so many similarities in those films, but it's all about execution. And where Sean Baker thrives in his incredible execution between like The Florida Project, Red Rocket, Tangerine, even Starlet, his movies are just so rich and thought-provoking and so well executed. This movie is so incredibly hollow. Even our lead character Star, who I do think at the beginning of the film they do a good job of kind of showing where she's coming from, and I think the first 25 minutes of this movie is the strongest part of the film. The problem is it's 2 hours and 40 minutes long, and for the remaining 2 hours and 20 minutes, it's just not as thoughtful or engaging or enthralling as that first 20 minutes, where once she joins Shia LaBeouf and Riley Keough and their group of people, we get long sequences of these kids just singing in the car, or we get long sequences of just a pointless, mundane, menial conversation that doesn't really add up to anything. It doesn't really give us any depth to our characters. It gives you sort of an idea of where they are in their headspace, but nothing to really pack that emotional gut punch. And all these characters are incredibly unlikable from top to bottom. There's not really anyone, even Star, who has been through a really traumatic experience and who's gone through a lot at the hands of her abusive father. She essentially had to become a mother to these two kids that aren't even hers. That should really be able to carry its weight through the entirety of the 2 hours and 40 minutes of this movie. And it just doesn't, because she's just a mean, terrible person that you really can't attach yourself onto, other than like if you're able to, you know, think about where she comes from. But to me, you have to add something to the character to make me want to hold on and care more. And I just don't, unfortunately. It's the way that the writing comes across. And like I said, there's just so many mundane stretches of just nothingness in this film. It could have been cut down to an hour and a half and it would have been exactly the same movie. And there's moments like there's a scene where she tries to sell magazines to these rich older men that make her try to eat the worm out of a mezcal bottle, and Shia LaBeouf shows up, and they try to make this big like crux scene where will they try to abuse her, like any of those types of things, and then Shia LaBeouf stops in. But the pacing of the sequence and the way that it kind of plays out doesn't really add to the emotional payoff of the film in any way. It's kind of like, well, that just happened, let's move on to the next sequence. And they try to paint Riley Keough as the villain in the film, like, and honestly it doesn't really work all that much because of her limited screen time. Even the times that she's in it, like the brief moments where it's like, oh, I got you good because I run this and you're not doing the job because you're not willing to comply with what everyone else is doing. I don't know, none of the character dynamics really keep me engaged and keep me hooked to the screen. And like I said, the cinematography in this thing is really beautiful, and I do think our lead performers do give really great performances with the material that they're given. But if you want to paint this portrait of, you know, the lower income parts of America and like the struggles that people have to overcome to just make it on a day-to-day basis, and you give yourself 2 hours and 40 minutes to do it, say something more. Because every time I watch this, well, the 2 times that I've watched this movie, both times I've just felt empty by the end of it. I don't feel like there's anything really keeping a hold of me, making me want to watch this. Like, it's just, there's nothing that grabs a hold of me that says, wow, this really spoke to me in one way or another. Where at the end of, like I said, with Sean Baker's films, The Florida Project, I really feel the struggles of those characters and what those young kids had to go through in a very poignant way that I feel like stands the test of time. And this is more like, I hung out with these characters for 2 hours and 40 minutes. A lot of them come from a really bad background and they're kind of still in that same situation. They didn't really overcome anything. I don't know. I don't really see the point of this film. And I guess if it resonates with you in one way or the other, I'm really glad that something in this material sticks with you, but it does absolutely nothing for me at all. So have you seen American Honey? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I think this movie is very mediocre. I'm not 100% sure why so many people think this is like one of the greatest A24 films other than aesthetic, because it doesn't really have anything in the script to make you really attach to it at all. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.